Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Disney very closely these last few months, and it's time we take a look at the Fox deal. What's the Fox deal? This is the deal where Bob Iger decided, you know something? I've got an extra $71.4 billion to spend of Disney's money. Let me just go buy Fox. What the heck? Now, this was a transformative deal, and the truth to be told, it wasn't really $71 billion. It netted out to about $57 billion, and I will explain why in just a bit. If you go back to the time of 2019, Iger actually did say in a CNBC interview that Disney bought Fox because of the value it adds to their new streaming service, which then was going to be Disney Plus. He actually said we would have not done the transaction had we not decided to go in this direction, such that no Disney Plus, there would not have been a deal to purchase Fox for all of that money. And the incredible thing about it is Disney has been transformed by acquisition since the days of Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner spent $19 billion or so on buying ABC. This is covered very well in James Stewart's Disney War. A lot of other interesting stuff about Disney and Disney's management as well. And also a great example of how in the first 10 years, Disney did great under Michael Eisner, and then the next 10 years or so, not so good. 10 years is pretty much the max for any Disney CEO. If he stays more than 10 years, things are about to get berserk. But what they tend to do at Disney is make these major acquisitions, such as ABC, and Roy Disney, who was a nephew of Walt Disney himself, and a very creative guy, there to protect the Disney brand, had said he was not for the acquisition of ABC, not because of the business side of it. The business transaction actually worked out great for Disney, but that was the beginning of the end of their focus on family values and the Disney brand, because the Disney brand couldn't really encompass all that ABC was, and it couldn't encompass all that ESPN was. ESPN was a big part of that deal, and Roy Disney was right. Roy would have probably lost his mind understanding later that they were buying Pixar and Marvel and Lucasfilm and all the things that they did after that. And then Fox was absolutely, completely off the planet in any consideration from what Walt Disney had in mind for what the Disney brand stood for and what it was all about. Disney has just become this hedge fund, basically, of all these different intellectual properties and assets. And that's a business, but it's not the Disney business. And that's why those of us who grow up and appreciated Disney, some of these franchises that were not originally part of Disney, look at it now and say, hey, you know what? What have you done to the properties that we actually cared about? Right now, Disney is focused on their Lucasfilm project, Indiana Jones, trying to convince everyone why it's important that Indiana Jones is depressed, now 70 years old as a character. This is going to come out in Dial of Destiny. The director is actually talking about this, Mangold. So he's talking about how, well, we're going to show him young, and then we're going to show him when he's old, and basically nobody cares about him, and the world has moved on, and he needs to accept that he's useless now. I mean, it's incredible what they've done. Basically the same thing they did with Luke Skywalker. And this is the result of not having focused businesses and focused intellectual property. Now let's get into this article from Los Angeles Times. This is a current article. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. Disney got The Simpsons and Avatar, but some see the Fox deal as a mistake. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to say they got just The Simpsons and Avatar, Avatar is great, but not worth $57 billion. Will history judge Walt Disney's purchase of Fox a success, or will the 2019 acquisition turn out to be Disney chief executive Bob Iger's biggest blunder? I'm going to tell you right now, it probably was his biggest blunder. Up until that point, they were probably doing okay, generally speaking. They had to take on $36 billion of debt just to acquire Fox, and to do that to support the Disney Plus streaming service, if that's what they were doing strategically, it really doesn't actually make any sense. And I've been reading Bob Iger's book. I've read this twice now, on The Ride of a Lifetime. I am interested in executives. I'm interested in entertainment and Disney company. And of course, it supports the videos as well. But he doesn't talk about buying Fox to support Disney Plus. He talks about how they need to have scale, and that is understandable. You want to be a big company so you can be a competitor, but he didn't talk about it supporting Disney Plus. And it's funny because he spent some time in this interview very specifically talking about how it was supposed to support their streaming service, just acquiring Fox, and they've changed the narrative completely from then. But that was the narrative of the time. He's had to change it so that it's not ridiculous. Disney War is also a good book that I've reread recently. I can recommend both of those books. Activist investor Nelson Peltz's excoriation of Iger's decision to load up on content for the streaming wars by buying Rupert Murdoch's TV and movie studios and other entertainment assets has touched off a spirited debate. Peltz, through his Trian Fund Management, accused Disney executives of exhibiting poor judgment by materially overpaying for the Fox assets. Earlier this month, his firm ended its proxy fight against Disney. So far, Peltz is laying back. Iger is doing what Peltz wants him to do. We'll see how that develops over time. But the hangover from the Fox deal has come into sharp focus this month in light of Iger's dramatic plan, which is not really Iger's plan. This was Disney's plan. This is what the CFO and Bob Chapek were going to do to cut costs by $5.5 billion, including eliminating 7,000 jobs. And again, those 7,000 jobs, it's 3% of the workforce, but it's a big percentage of people who work in their offices. It's not the theme park people. So it's closer to 6 or even 8% of their workforce. It is among the largest reductions in the history of the storied entertainment company, which cut thousands of jobs following the Fox deal. Buying Murdoch Studios undoubtedly allowed Disney to scoop up valuable franchises, including the television's longest-running scripted show, The Simpsons, as well as film juggernaut Avatar, giving Disney a slice of the $2.2 billion in global box office receipts from Avatar: The Way of Water. Disney also picked up the original Star Wars film. They have the original film, good for them, as well as X-Men, Fantastic Four, Deadpool. You know, that's fine that you can merge them into the Marvel universe. I'm all for that. I always liked Marvel back in the day. But they haven't done any X-Men movies. They're doing a Deadpool movie that's coming out, I guess, in 2024. And, you know, there's talk about the Fantastic Four movie, but like they also didn't utilize Ice Age. So what are they doing buying this property? Why would you spend $71 billion, net $57 billion, and not make a plan to develop X-Men, Deadpool, Fantastic Four, Ice Age, like all of their franchises right away? Very poor execution on the part of Bob Iger. The National Geographic and FX cable channels also came with a deal, along with proven TV industry leaders. All have been instrumental in beefing up Disney's content populace. But some critics on Wall Street argue the acquisition and integrating the Fox staff and operations into Disney distracted the Burbank entertainment giant from its core mission of creating high-quality family entertainment. Disney no longer creates high-quality family entertainment. They are not a family-oriented company. We know that now. They don't hide that. They lost their soul over this Fox deal. Cohen & Company media analyst Doug Kreutz was never sold on the Fox deal and now partially blames it for Disney's current troubles, which include managing an even larger portfolio of declining linear cable TV channels and absorbing billion-dollar losses at the company as the company builds not one but 4 streaming services to compete with Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and others. In addition to Disney Plus, Disney operates ESPN Plus, Hulu, as well as Disney Plus Hotstar streaming service in India. Now, the Hotstar streaming service in India was a good deal, and that came through the Fox acquisition. So it has plenty of value to it. Even without Fox, Disney would still be struggling with the linear channels and figuring out how to make streaming profitable, said Kreutz. But they'd be in a much better position financially without all this debt sitting on their balance sheet, and they would not have needed as big of a reorganization. Much has changed since Iger unveiled the takeover of Fox in December 2017. At the time, Wall Street was high on the future of streaming companies. Iger and Murdoch had initially agreed on a $52.4 billion all-stock deal for Fox, which several observers said would have been a coup for Disney. But Iger found himself dragged into a bidding war by Comcast chief executive Brian Roberts, who offered Murdoch considerably more money. To clinch the deal, Disney ultimately agreed to pay $71.3 billion. In addition, Disney assumed nearly $14 billion in Fox debt, according to company documents. Comcast eventually wrangled out of Murdoch's assets, the European satellite TV service Sky. Comcast then paid Disney $15 billion for Fox's ownership stake in Sky. It should also be said, and they miss it in this article, that Comcast had to write off a lot of the value of this Sky acquisition. So Comcast got hit on what they spent for that percentage of ownership in Sky TV service. So Comcast overpaid when they bought that out of the Fox deal. Antitrust regulators also forced Disney to sell another asset, Fox's regional sports networks that carry local games of professional hockey, baseball, and basketball teams. The government refused to allow Disney to own both ESPN and more than 20 regional sports channels, so Disney auctioned off the channels, including the Yes Network that carries the New York Yankees for more than $10 billion. So Disney was able to raise around $25 billion as part of selling off part of Fox's assets. So subtracting proceeds from those assets, Disney places the Fox deal at around $57 billion. Even that was way too much, says Kreutz. The lingering problem is the debt. In 2018 regulatory filings, Disney said it planned to take on as much as $36 billion in debt to cover the cash portion of the cash and stock deal to Murdoch and his shareholders. Regulatory filings show the company actually took on about $26 billion. Then, a year after the Fox deal closed, Disney was ravaged by the global pandemic. Theme parks, movie theaters, and sports attractions were shuttered, and it was forced to take on even more debt. As of last quarter, Disney's debt stood at $45 billion. When the Fox deal was finalized in March 2019, Iger said in a statement, Disney and Fox's unparalleled collection of businesses and franchises will allow us to create more appealing, high-quality content, expand our direct-to-consumer offerings and international presence, and deliver more personalized and compelling content experiences to meet growing consumer demand around the world. Well, that's fancy and is very well said, but you can't take away this public statement and this interview where basically Bob Iger says, and he says it here, they would not have spent $71 billion on Fox's assets if they weren't doing a direct-to-consumer streaming service called Disney+. That's a lot of money to spend on Disney+. And how has that turned out? They've lost more than $11.5 billion to date on Disney+. It's really been badly managed. Disney also offered Fox library titles to Disney+ international customers. Disney+ has more than 160 million subscribers globally. People close to the company said the Fox deal accelerated Disney's leap into streaming, giving it a head start over rivals such as Warner Brothers, NBC Universal, and Paramount. Yale School of Management senior associate Jeffrey Sonnenfeld called the deal brilliant. Was it at a high cost? Yes, but you don't judge an investment as a business expense, but rather the return on the investment. This is what he's saying here is when you make an investment, you don't expense out the investment like that's a cost of doing business. Like if you buy a restaurant, buying the restaurant business is different than buying food for the restaurant. Buying a restaurant business includes the goodwill of the customer base. But this is a lot of money to pay just to, quote, support your streaming service. Sonnenfeld said that the Fox assets could reap unexpected rewards for Disney down the line and cited an obscure historical reference, the 1867 purchase of Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. Of course, gold was later discovered there, sparking a gold rush, Sonnenfeld said. Can you imagine if Putin controlled that real estate now? Okay, yeah, that would be a problem if Putin owned Alaska, but that still, to me, it doesn't justify spending all that money on Fox. Disney's purchase of Fox kept the assets, including the popular streaming service Hulu, out of the hands of Comcast or another media foe. Now, I will say this because I've said it before. I still agree with this. I understand Bob Iger making this move. I probably would have very seriously considered making exactly the same move, not because of launching our own service, like our own Disney Plus service, but because of getting control of Hulu. I don't know why they haven't done more developing Hulu, why they need to lose so many billions trying to launch Disney Plus while they already own a controlling interest in Hulu. I mean, maybe you can tell me that in the comments below. Why would somebody do a thing like that? But I also do understand keeping Hulu and Fox's assets away from Comcast was very important. And that's another great reason to do the deal. But still, it hasn't been managed well. If you do a deal, it's got to be managed well. When Bob Iger bought Marvel, it had management in place. When they bought Lucasfilm, it did not have as much management in place. They had to find a deal with J.J. Abrams. You either liked Force Awakens or you didn't. I think that's one of the best Star Wars movies they made. Everything else after that was pretty terrible. But Mandalorian was good. Pixar, for example, had management to spare. Pixar was so well managed that was such an easy deal for Disney to do in terms of was it worth it for them to do it. Because when they bought Pixar, they got management from Pixar to actually fix Disney animation in addition to bringing in Pixar. It's just since they've gone ahead and ruined a lot of the Pixar brand for their woke ideology. That's another video. On the most recent earnings call, Iger told analysts the company would devote less resources to making general entertainment content. But one of the primary rationales for buying Fox was to increase Disney's arsenal of general entertainment content. That raises the question, so why did you buy Fox, Cruz asked. This whole thing is, Iger is talking about how, well, we don't really want Hulu. They desperately want Hulu at Disney. They just don't want to have to pay more than they have to pay when they make a deal with Comcast for the part that Comcast owns. So Iger has been supposedly questioning the value of Hulu. He wants to own Hulu. The whole thing with Disney is it really is a house of cards and everything is very interdependent with everything else. They really can't afford to sell ESPN. They can't afford to sell Hulu. They can't afford to sell Marvel. They can't afford to sell Lucasfilm. Doesn't matter the price. Everything is so interlocked that it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. They can't afford to sell a piece of it or the whole thing would fall apart. The question for Disney is, do they want to be a scaled broad entertainment company or the mother of all niche entertainment companies with family-friendly entertainment? This is from Jason Kilar, the former Warner Media chief who built Hulu. Now, I have a lot of respect for Jason Kilar for what he did with Hulu, but the question of does Disney want to be a family niche-oriented company? They're not a family niche-oriented company. Disney does not care a thing about families. They only care about woke ideology, and trying to hustle stockholders. I have a very, very bad feeling about Bob Iger. I think Bob Iger, what happened with Michael Eisner, which is the same kind of thing that happened with Bob Iger, was everybody wants to be Walt Disney without doing the work. So Michael Eisner, he did come on, he did reinvent the company, he did rescue Disney, he added a lot to it, and he was a creative guy. But he was no Walt Disney. He just wasn't. And Bob Iger came on, and Bob Iger said, hey, you know what? I can make all these other acquisitions. I can fix our management problems with animation. As Iger had said, and he was probably right, as goes animation at Disney, and it was doing terrible when he got into the role of CEO, so goes the company. So by buying Pixar, he was able to completely rejuvenate their animation. There was no other way to do it. That was a great move. It was a great deal for them. But he's also no Walt Disney. Buying Marvel, buying Lucasfilm doesn't turn you into a creative genius of sorts. It really doesn't, as is obvious when you look at what Bob Iger has done with the intellectual properties he's had under his control. And where you look at where their stock is now compared to where it was even a year or two ago. They're in serious trouble. They probably shouldn't have bought Fox. They still haven't fully integrated Fox. I keep pointing to Ice Age. Zootopia is getting a sequel. Okay, Zootopia did do $1 billion, but what about Ice Age? How do you not do a good sequel to Ice Age? Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments below. Did Bob Iger make the right move by spending $71.4 billion, $57 billion, whatever it was, on Fox? Or did Bob Iger really just take on too much and get too narcissistic, too focused on trying to build the biggest entertainment company in the world and take things too far? Really appreciate your comments. Always love to see them. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.